So, welcome back. I have been making dice trays, and it may or may not be because I have more dice than I know what to do with, but also I found that it was fun to make out of relatively inexpensive materials. And after buying a lot of dice, I was given a leather dice tray by Misty Mountain Gaming at a convention. And I said, thank you. And he said, no, this isn't a gift. You tell people that you bought this. And he gave me the tray. He gave me a really neat wooden card. It's not sponsored, but I do really like these people. And every time I go to a convention and I find them, I buy dice from them. So that's what this is. Now, to prove that this isn't sponsored, let's show you how to make a dice tray instead of buying one. So this is made out of chipboard and pink insulation foam, and then painted to high heaven. Sealed with Mod Podge at the very end. I even have these fancy ones with magnets with no flaws. Some flaws. I'm going to redesign these, honestly. So we're going to make something more bare bones, but you can go nuts. The little brick texture is made out of cardboard and then painted and dry brushed. It's all materials that you can get relatively inexpensively. The expense for this comes in time. Time is expensive. But I digress. If you don't make the magnetic version, you can make something that you can customize all the way to the nines. This is covered in modeling paste, hammered, textured in with a ball of aluminum foil, little citadel skulls, and actual just really small nails that I pushed in with my thumb. And the sky's the limit. So if you make a dice tray of your own like this, I would love to see it. All of these techniques are taken directly from other D&D builders. Black Magic Craft comes to mind first. A lot of the painting techniques come from Lila the Mini Witch. Both are incredible channels, and they're incredible, just like artists, builders, and they're not messing around. They'll show you how to do what they do really well, and it's good stuff. Hopefully no explanation needed, just cutting out boards to dimension. This is just really heavy chipboard. It's thick, it is relatively durable, it's extraordinarily light. It will absorb water like nobody's business, so you do need to seal these things with primer, and when you're done painting, seal it with Mod Podge or something like that. But the inexpensive of the materials means that you can kind of do whatever you want, which I enjoy. But one of these sheets gets me 2 trays and 1 folding tray. And when I figure out how to make folding trays correctly, I'll make another video on that. So this is a hand-forged little knife that I'm making a mark into foam for almost no reason. And this little T-square is the only tool that I have right now that keeps things nice and pretty and even. I like it very much. And I had to hot glue this knife open because the knife literally kept falling out of it or getting stuck and getting caught. And I was done with that. I'm just going to sharpen it forever, which is fine, and have absolutely no knife safety. There's just going to be an open blade knife forever on my desk. Make light cuts, and insulation foam will cut nice and cleanly. I mess up a little on the edges, but that's just because I'm me. Anybody that's more careful could do pretty good. It cuts very smooth when you have an angled blade. And I'm just chamfering edges. I have a little ball of foam that I'm going to absolutely hammer into all of the pieces of foam that I make. So, this is the heavy labor part of it. I like hammered copper, I like hammered metal, I like stone textures. I don't have a rock that has the right texture to it, but a ball of aluminum foil, you can make several and just pick the one that you like, or you can make one and then just keep hitting it until it works. The ball specifically. But It does a really good job with adding a relatively natural texture that just looks good. And anything that you do with foam, you need expensive foam-safe glue and expensive foam-safe super glue setter, which you don't actually need. You can just be patient. I promise. If you don't use foam-safe glue, or if your glue is too hot and you're using hot glue, it will dissolve the foam or melt the foam. It'll do exactly what you think it would do. Using the edges as a guide, I cut poorly. And if you measure your pieces first, you can just cut all of these things to dimension and then assemble them on the tray, which is a little bit more efficient, not gonna lie. But don't forget to go in and add more textures. Always add more texture. There's no downside to more texture unless it's not what you want. And then there is. And then it's your fault and not mine. I will happily blame you for no reason. I was very happy to sell a few of these at a local convention. The rings that I've made in the past ended up making an appearance too. And those did really nicely. And I'm very happy that people enjoyed them. The dice trays were a spectacle, to say the very least, but it's only because you have just... If you have a bunch of them in a bunch of colors, they're fun to look at. But remember to cut towards yourself in a sharp jerking motion, which you absolutely should not do. And then cut all of your pieces to dimension carefully. Measure twice, cut once, and then cut again when you cut wrong the first time. And then continue cutting because you realize that you're definitely wrong. And then realize you cut too short. And then later on, you'll figure out how to fix that. Just foreshadowing for the next 60 seconds. Very confident in this cut. I was super sure that that was exactly what I needed to do. How could that possibly go wrong? Yep, cut off this little sliver here. Cut off a little bit on the other side, and it's immediately too loose in both directions. Oh, I cut off more. Good. But you can also do other things for texture. If you use a wire brush, you can get a really nice wooden texture. I'm going to have... When the Mimic comes out of retirement, there's going to be easily several hours worth of showing you how to make wood textures. But technically, it's already a dice tray. But now let's make it a little bit stronger, a little bit more cohesive. Modeling paste is fun stuff. It's generally used for painters that want more texture on their canvas. But you can do all sorts of stuff. You can embed leaves in it. You can just spread it around and make things sort of like craggy, and the texture that it ends up having is very close to stone, I believe, because it is very fine stone particles suspended in something that will cure very quickly in open air. Easily moldable by hand, easily washable with water. Until it cures. Once it cures, you're absolutely boned. So keep that in mind. And if it's messy, that's just extra texture. You're getting stuff for free. And that's my favorite part of that. And so I'm priming with an airbrush. You can prime with Mod Podge and black paint. You can prime with whatever you feel fit. Don't prime with spray paint specifically on bare foam unless you know what you're doing and you've tested that it will not dissolve your foam. Black Magic Craft talks about it a lot. I'm going to say it out loud so that that isn't something that happens when you get something you're really happy with and then it turns into a puddle because you went too hard with a Krylon can. Don't do that. But a base coat of black acrylic paint is... or black acrylic primer in this case is more than good enough for what we're going to do. And if you want a generally lighter tray, Then prime in white or gray or some mix of both. Do whatever you want. I'm not an expert in this. I made 20 of these, and I still feel like I got it wrong most of the time. I got it just correct enough that once I Mod Podged everything together, it was strong and cohesive, but I feel like I still have plenty of room to learn on these. So, dry brushing. Gray paint, a fluffy brush, and as little paint on the brush as possible, and bringing out the details. It takes some doing and takes some figuring out to figure out what you like or how you want to make the paint do what you want. You might want to experiment on some scrap foam. If you buy a $10 sheet of pink insulation foam, you'll have more than enough to practice with. And I always encourage practicing as much as possible. Like, practice on something you don't care about before you work on something you absolutely adore. That way you have confidence that comes in instead of tragedy. The tragedy of feeling like you messed up instantly is usually really dejecting, but honestly, if you're learning while you're doing something, you're still learning. It's okay. The number of times I have had that's a good arm. The number of times I have had knives that I have to completely restart or throw away or put in a scrap bucket because what I did wasn't just insufficient, it was wrong. It taught me plenty of things. The number of rings that are unsellable or unwearable because they're too sharp or too lazily made. It is what it is. Learn as you go. It is okay to fail. And so now for the center, I chose a general motif of sort of swirls and patterns in dark reds and whites. And that was just because it sort of fit the theme that I had in my head, that this is some sort of like demonic portal that you roll your dice into. And if you roll like me, then you roll like absolute dog shit every single time you roll. And when you roll well, it's very exciting, but I'm the DM, so when I roll well, it's generally not what anybody wants. So I figured the red motif with a ominous portal was very fitting. If you're a better painter, you could turn this into absolutely anything that you wanted to. You could just paint your character portraits in there. There's pretty much no limit as long as you don't mess with the bottom so much so that it stops you from being able to roll flat and fair. So as long as you keep that in mind, go nuts. And if you make a tray, I would love to see it. I don't know how or what the best manner of sharing that is, but I'll figure it out sometime. Eventually. I haven't put a video up in several months because I've been very busy with my animation channel, but I've also been very, very busy with work. And this was something that I needed 20 of very quickly. So I'm happy that I recorded this stuff that I recorded so that I could at least share some of what I've been doing. And when painting, take the Bob Ross approach of anything that looks good that you didn't intend was a happy accident. Don't stress it. Put paint down. If you don't like it, paint over it. No one's gonna be mad at you. I'm not gonna be mad at you. I'm not. Anyway. And these paints are... I've used a mix of Vallejo model paints and cheap off-the-wall, like Walmart paints. They both do a good job at what they're supposed to do. There's no downside to either. It might be a bit of a lie. I think I used only Vallejo paints on this one. And much like earlier, Vallejo is not sponsoring me for anything. Period. They do not know that I exist. I am just a fan of how the paint gets put down on what I put on it, or put it on. So a little bit of painting, and we call it good. Ta-da! Now, you might see other dice trays out and about, but just keep in mind that I made 3 of these at a time, and after looking back at it, I think I'm going to go into detail on some other things, and I'm going to redesign the magnetic trays before I keep making them so that they have fewer fatal flaws. And this is just matte Mod Podge. Off the shelf, like, put it everywhere. It dries clear like glue. It seals everything together. It adds a little bit of a shell to everything, so stuff is just a little bit stronger. And in general, it works out pretty nicely. I do an absolutely terrible job applying it here, and I don't believe that I leave that little pool standing. But cover every surface, or cover the top, let it dry, cover the sides, let it dry, cover the bottom, let it dry, seal it all the way around to protect from spills. And just remember that if you ever think, man, I could be doing this better, you're already doing it better than I'm doing it. I'm going to cut this, but it is very silly to watch past Adrian use a pool of Mod Podge in one tray to seal to seal another one. Anyway, for what it's worth, making a bunch of these at the same time did make me feel a little crazy, but doing one step at a time, if you're doing sort of a production run style of these, if you do one step over and over again, with a sort of production mentality, it goes a little bit quicker. So here's one where I did an experiment on the bottom with earth texture paste. It's more earth and druid sort of focused, maybe village focused, but wire brush and some wood texture with a little bit of paint. I really liked how it came out, but it had a bit of unevenness on the bottom. This is the aforementioned flawed magnetic tray, which I both like and want to redesign. The brick texture, however you think I made it, that's exactly how I made it. I may do another video on other textures that you can make in foam, but it depends on if people are interested. There's some really good builders out there that do some really good work, and I highly encourage you to look up D&D builders for extra techniques in different materials that you may not have used before. It's a really satisfying snap. I want that snap to be satisfying and functional. The back is just a piece of tape. It's from my airplane days. And that's our little guy. I didn't mention it, but there was a little glue spill earlier that really doesn't matter at all, because once you paint over it and you Mod Podge it, it all becomes the same texture. My lighting is terrible, but I did do some dry brushing of green and a little bit of red on the outsides. I liked how that turned out. The walls are a bit thick for my tastes now, but this did work out pretty dang good. And I'm very happy with it. And as it turns out, you can roll dice in it. Who knew? The silly double dice tray at the bottom was an idea that I had on a Sunday, and I was like, all right, it's all the same thing. It rolls die. But if you make your own and you have a way to share, I would love to share. And maybe I'll create a Max Power email just so that people can share projects that they've done, because I like seeing what people do. But thank you very much for watching. I hope you have a lovely day and that your projects are going well. And in general, I hope that your dice roll you stories that are worth telling. Anyway, thank you very much. Everybody have a nice day. Bye.